If Juventus went on to win the Scudetto, I still wouldn't believe in the project. I still wouldn't believe the project because I don't see the transfer window lining up. I don't see players performing. I see players that have promise, and like a player like Yildiz, that are actually getting destroyed. I see a guy like Cambiaso, who was phenomenal in the first 5-10 games of the season, destroyed.
The top half of the Serie A table, as you can see, Atalanta with that win. They're only 3 points away from Inter in first place. And Grella, we could see Juventus in fourth, definitely out of this Scudetto race, which you said before they were not going to be in. I know the focus will be on Juventus a lot, but we have to give Atalanta their credit for the statement win that they got, for the football that Gasperini implemented. And next week, they play against Inter, which would be a huge match.
And they were not in their greatest form tonight, right? They're coming in 2 wins in 9, you said, 3 wins in 10, whatever way you want to look at it. They were not in their greatest form, but they changed the way they played. And what made them great against Liverpool and Leverkusen, I mentioned it earlier as well, is when they don't have the ball. They're better when they don't have the ball. When they win it, they go quick. They're hard to play against. They're man-to-man. So they were fantastic tonight, I thought, from start to finish.
I think school was in session from Gasperini to Thiago Motta. He absolutely understood the game plan. He knew how to play to the strengths of them. And I think there's not many teams in Serie A who could go to Juventus' stadium and to put Juventus under that pressure. Maybe this season we're seeing it a lot because of the way they play, but to kill it off and to keep adding on and piling on to what they're able to do.
For me, it was a bigger lesson for Atalanta than it was for Juventus. Because I think with Juventus, we knew that it was not true. The 6 points coming into the match, it was not true of what we've seen in the project so far. So many games that they were lackluster. They had a ton of possession, but nothing to go for. I say for Atalanta because they wanted to, getting ahead of themselves, Retegui scoring so many goals, they wanted to possess games. They wanted to impose themselves in games. They tried to play out of the back. They had a 1-0 win against Napoli at home. 1-0 winning in the first half, and they decided to play backwards and try to play in these cute areas, and Napoli picked them off and went to score. That's what they do to teams. And if they continue to play the Atalanta style from last season that made them so successful, they will have a real chance at the Scudetto. Not dominating possession. That's not their style. They can't forget what makes their style. And on the flip side, for me, for Juventus, if they go on, and I'll just to exaggerate it to make you understand, to make everybody understand, if Juventus went on to win the Scudetto, I still wouldn't believe in the project. I still wouldn't believe the project because I don't see the transfer window lining up. I don't see players performing. I see players that have promise, and like a player like Yildiz, that are actually getting destroyed. I see a guy like Cambiaso, who was phenomenal in the first 5-10 games of the season, destroyed. I see Locatelli getting worse every time he plays. I see Koopmeiners destroyed. Luis is not even available. You get rid of Huijsen to bring in Kelly. He was terrible. I'm not convinced at all. So I don't see the project. I don't see the football. I don't see how 63% possession, or on the average, I think they have 59% possession on the league, but you never shoot in the target. You never look dangerous. I don't see how that fits the Juventus DNA. That in Torino, the crowd leaves. The curva leaves.
I've never seen that before.
I have never seen Juventus performance like that. Credit again to Atalanta because they're a very good team when they stick to their identity and who they are. But this Motta project, I've seen enough. Out to PSV in the Champions League in an embarrassing fashion. Out to Empoli in the Coppa Italia, made history for Empoli, and now has just made history for Atalanta, biggest win over them in Torino. So for me, those 3 things, they don't get top 4. This is a sackable offense to me. I hate to say that because you never want to call for someone to lose their job, but for Juventus and what the club means, I don't see this project moving in the right direction.
So I think a lot of fans would agree if you get out of the top 4 for Juventus financially, it would be a total disaster, a total nightmare. And this also brings Lazio back into the equation because they play again tomorrow. But do you think even with top 4, my question is, with top 4, is it enough to still keep Thiago Motta? Because like you said, how many times have we sat here and said, I've never seen Juventus play that poorly. I've never seen them get dominated at home. And I think you could justify it if they win today and they're still within distance. I know you say that the 6 points is a lie, but if at least they were competing on paper for the title, you could justify it. But do you think with top 4, with the season that they've had, has it been enough?
I don't agree. I don't think it's been enough. I'm saying top 4 just because if he's outside the top 4, then I think it's not more. It's an easier discussion, which I'm not sure that Juventus feel that way. I'm not sure that they feel that if they're outside the top 4, they're ready to go away from Motta. We'll see. I mean, it remains to be seen. I say that top 4 just for other people, but for me, it already hasn't been enough. Because, again, I don't think the DNA matches up. I don't think side to side, slow, never looking dangerous, never shooting in target, making your assets look worse than they are. I don't think, Lippi said this as well, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think that Thiago Motta has the correct characteristics, not to be a great manager, because I think he is. He showed that he's a good manager at Bologna. To be the Juventus manager. Being a great manager and being the manager of Juventus, for me, can be 2 different things. And I think they are for Motta. That's why, like I said, even if they were to go on and even close the gap even further, I don't see the football that they play, the manner that they play, one time compete, one time not compete. I don't see it. Moving different guys in different positions. There's a lot of confusion that's being created, not just from Motta, but from Giuntoli as well. And now with these 3 exits, because you could almost call tonight an exit, because it was telling tonight out of the Scudetto race, out of PSV, out of Coppa Italia with Empoli. I think I've seen enough.
I think from Juventus, it's also, you think that they're back on track. You think that they're finally putting together a string of wins, and now they can make their statement. And you could lose to Atalanta. You can, because anybody could lose to Atalanta, but you can't lose in this manner.
No,
that's where you get the turning point. To give credit to Atalanta, as you just mentioned, huge match against Inter next week. One where Inter has dominated Atalanta in recent years. You brought up the numbers and the stats, and we could see what it could mean. That would be the moment for Atalanta. It's a shame that they haven't been able to pick up points against Venezia and Cagliari, where they got 0-0 ties, but it does come down to this. It's the head-to-head. We know Inter have a huge match against Feyenoord, where they have to qualify for. Do you think the approach will change against Atalanta? You just mentioned Atalanta's approach against Juventus has changed. They played into giving themselves a chance. Do you think it will change against Inter?
Well, I thought Atalanta also played in their end, because I think Atalanta can have the ball when they're in the opponent's end. They're really good at that, at squeezing you in there and being tight. But when they start to play out of their own end, that's never been their DNA. So I like when they play behind and they force defenders to Gatti facing his own goal all the time, 1v1 with Lookman all the time. I will say this, no matter how they approach Inter is a very difficult team for Atalanta because of the man-to-man system that Atalanta have. And Inter get guys
so how do they win?
From the midfield.
How do they line up to give themselves a chance? Because they've gotten beat by that multiple times.
You have to, for me personally, and I don't know exactly how to tweak it for Gasperini and what it means to his men, but what I will say is when they play with 5 at the back, what Inter will do with Lautaro Martinez, Thuram, they'll come into the midfield. They'll attract one of the center backs. When that center back leaves, it leaves a massive gap. They've got to be more careful and try to pass guys on when they can. So if he goes into the midfield, can you pass him on to Derun? But the problem is Derun is usually tracking someone else higher up the field. So they have to find the system. Or when that center back goes out, those other center backs have to come and tuck in to close the gap. And then you look like 4 at the back. And when they shift as well, they have to do that a little bit better, because what Inter does well is they get guys running from the midfield. They do a quick into Lautaro back, and then they get a runner, either Barella or Mkhitaryan, and they get runners from the midfield. The wing backs come inside, and that's what's created the problems for Atalanta.
Yeah, we're going to have to see if Atalanta will be able to do it and find the solutions. They certainly have the capabilities, because you look at the attack, you look at their firepower. They also have 12 clean sheets on the season, which I think is something that Atalanta need to progress with and start to implement a lot more. But it will all come down to that next week. It'll all come down to, can you beat the team at the top of the table? Can they keep the dream alive? And can they win their first ever Scudetto? We'll find out next week.